I've been on this stage before, and I'm used to the slight echo. You will get used to it in a bit. Um, so welcome, everyone. There is no fire here, and we will not take sides. We will just chat. So let me just start with a question that's not at all heated. We will probably move on from here. But you've just come back from the US, and I'm really curious to understand myself and on behalf of the audience how you are seeing the ecosystem of startups, innovation, and technology in particular growing in the Valley versus in India, or even in the rest of the world, if you have a view on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, firstly, great to see you. And hi, everyone. You know, I was just thinking, I think 5 years from now, you and I don't have to be here. None of you need to be here. You know, with virtual reality, with augmented reality, it'll feel like we're all here. And the benefit is every single chair will be full. As opposed to, you know, like 1/3 of the hall being full, you know. Anyways, so yeah, I just got back from the Bay Area, Shinjini, as you said. Look, in the US today, venture capital and also to lesser extent startups, but really venture capital is only focused on one thing, which is AI, right? Artificial intelligence. Whereas in India, India is also focused on AI, but it's all about India, right? And there couldn't be a starker difference because what's happening in India today is we are seeing this extraordinary innovation across almost every sector, right? If you take consumer products, Mama Earth went from launch to IPO in 7 years, and I don't know what the latest market cap is, but you know, probably 12,000, 15,000 crores, right? So if you think about, can you create a new brand in 7 years, take it public, and it trades at tens of thousands of crores, it's kind of crazy, right? So whether it's consumer brands, whether it's travel, whether it's gaming, whether it's financial services, whether it's healthcare, whether it's education, as well as AI, obviously. There's also, you know, a fair bit of AI innovation. So I think what we are seeing is a divergence in the two ecosystems, where the US ecosystem, as we speak, only really is focused on AI. And by the way, AI is many things, you know, models, infrastructure, tooling, applications. Whereas in India, what we're seeing is much more broad-based innovation. And I think at least my view coming back is over the next decade, we will see a very significant divergence in these two ecosystems because what's happening in India is as India develops, we go from $2,500 per capita to $2,500 per capita to $4,000 per capita to $8,000 per capita. Everything is being built in India from scratch, right? Whereas in the US, you've got a very developed economy where really it's about software, right? And it's about the next generation of software, which is really artificial intelligence. So, you know, that's the big difference. And you can see it even in where dollars are being invested or rupees are being invested in India. It's actually a pretty nice mix. A couple of days ago, we announced an investment in a company called Mokobara. Mokobara makes bags. How many of you have a Mokobara bag? Anybody have a Mokobara bag? So I see one here, a couple of hands go up. I mean, it's a really cool company. You know, what do they make? They make travel bags, you know, and it's got lots and lots of revenue. It's growing very fast. Travel is booming, right? The similar company that went public in the US is now, interestingly, you'll find this very interesting, trades at almost less than Mokobara. Because, you know, I mean, there are so many bag brands in the US. And, you know, Americans aren't buying travel luggage for the first time. Whereas you have these Indian millennials and Gen Zs buying. So that's just one example, but there are many. I mean, look at salt. You know, I mean, India should have, I mean, we're going to have thousands of interesting financial services startups across payments, lending, insurance, wealth, and it's just starting. So long answer, but that's sort of what we're seeing.
Yeah, but I like that you make a distinction between where the money is going and where the innovation is happening and how the US ecosystem of VCs is 100% focused on AI. And I know that we are talking about different frontiers. So one tries to move from one frontier to another, which is the stage at which I think they are. Whereas we, in some senses, catch up and solve problems for a very large number of people. And I think it's a little bit similar to what has happened in the past also. And if it's not, I'd like to hear your views. So tell me, in the last 10 to 15 years, or if you want to take a longer slice of time, but in this ecosystem, what do you think are the 3 things that we have done right in the Indian ecosystem of
Yeah, I think,
innovation?
I think we've done more than 3 things right, hopefully.
Give me the top
We're
3.
the 3rd largest startup ecosystem in the world, so we've done more than a few things right. I would say, look, if I look at it, take a step back today, we have the most advanced fintech ecosystem in the world. There is no question. Okay?
Can we have claps for some
Yeah,
of
I mean,
this?
come on.
It
come
would
on,
be
what is
nice.
this, right, exactly. There are no fintech founders in the room. If it was GFF, Global Fintech Festival, it'd be like standing ovation, everybody's clapping and like,
Yeah.
hey, what's up? We're like the
Thank
best in the
you.
world. In 2015, I mean, you know this better than anybody else, right? Given what you've done. 2015, India was not in the top 100 countries
Yes.
on digital payments. Not in the top 100. I remember this. Actually, like 2 years ago, we had 48% share of global real-time payments.
Yeah.
Right? So I think at least my view, Shinjini, is in transactional businesses, okay? Transactional as in commerce, payments, anything to do with transactional businesses. India today is world class, okay? Let me give you one interesting non-payments, because everybody's talked about payments, so let's move away from that. Let's compare 2 apps, world class in each of their markets, DoorDash and Swiggy.
Yep.
Do you know that the Swiggy app is better on every single dimension than DoorDash?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's amazing, right? Because for a long period of time, the question was, where are India's product managers?
Yeah.
Where are India's scale engineering leaders?
Yeah.
By the way, nobody ever asked, where are India's ops leaders? Because we were always very good at ops,
yes.
right? But today, it's amazing to see our 15 years, right? We're about 15 years into this avatar of Indian startups, right? There were previous avatars, like IT services was really the big avatar post-independence. Then you had like pharmaceuticals. There was a mini wave of generic pharmaceuticals. There was an auto components wave. But now we have this new generation of startups which goes back maybe 15 years. I see a few companies like, Bharat Matrimony was founded a little before that. But now what we have is, so I would say transactional businesses, we're world class. So that's number 1. I think number 2, we have a government and a set of, I would say, technocrats like Nandan Nilankani, Sharad at his foundation, who are building never seen before public digital infrastructure, right? So DPI, everybody's talking about it. But actually, none of us have really begun to appreciate what DPI could do. I think the panel before this, right, Dinesh was talking about how 30% take rates. Like 30% take rates in India a decade from now will be really hard. Because in industry after industry, what Bezos did to retail in the US, DPI will do to margins everywhere in transactional businesses, right? So that's the second thing. I think the third thing is really what has happened in India is Indian entrepreneurs, right, have been just unleashed. 40% of Silicon Valley startups are Indian origin founders, either first generation, meaning they went and got their school.
40%.
40.
Wow.
40. Okay? So what has changed now is many of them are just starting up here. Right? Sachin and Vinny could have gone to the US, worked at Amazon in Seattle. And they could have gone then and started up either in Seattle or they could have moved to the Bay Area and started up in Menlo Park, right? Instead, they started up in Bangalore. So I think I think those are the sorts of things that I think are very exciting. So, in every ecosystem, Shinjini, there is what I call liftoff. Okay? We have liftoff. And now the question is, how high do you go?
So, very nice. I'll try to summarize it with the 3 things that I gleaned
You're better at
from it.
summarization. I usually now have ChatGPT do it for me.
Okay.
First, ChatGPT says, look, man, your sentences are just too long.
Okay, you're giving me competition, but I'll just try. So one thing I picked up from it is the public policy and private enterprise coming together. Because when you talk about DPI, when you talk about the kind of scale that this thing is able to achieve, I think that's one important thing, which is not just the past 10, 15 years, but also a precursor to what we will probably see in the future. The second thing I see from you is the whole story of talent, right? When you talk about 40% there. You talk about this whole dispersed entrepreneurial spirit that we see across this very large country. I think that's amazing. And the third thing that I hear you say is the sophistication on the product side, because
Just
it's not
world-class
just
capability.
exactly. So it's not just scale being built with operational expertise, but actually product capabilities. And there are many companies that we can name on that. So those three amazing things have happened. Let's all feel good about it. I also want you to give me three things that we haven't done so well in, that you think, because you have exposure to other markets and you know what's happening across the world in that same time period. What is it that you think we missed? That we
Yeah,
could
so
have done
I
better?
think, look, the first is because of really this extraordinary abundance of capital that we had over some period of time, right? Just to give you a sense, by the way, 2021 and 2022, India got $60 billion of startup funding, okay? Our run rate before that was about 10 to 12 billion. So we got 6 years worth of funding in 2 years. And everybody knows entrepreneurs. If you give that much capital,
Yeah.
it's not generally going to end well, okay? So what happened, I think, because of that is, we had some companies just try to grow too fast without having control systems in place. And we've seen some of that, right? So I think it's just a cost of having extraordinary amounts of capital in an ecosystem that didn't have it. By the way, these are not things just happen in India. Same thing happened in the US, same thing happened in China.
Of course.
It happens everywhere. But clearly it's something that we just need to be very careful, because we'll talk a little bit about funding, right? 2021 ain't coming back for, I see some entrepreneurs sitting in the front. It ain't coming back, but it's going to get better. And when it gets better and capital starts flowing, we just need to be more prudent about how we spend it. So I'd say that's number one. I think the second thing, look, is, we just don't have enough research and development, right? We don't have enough deeply technical founders starting up. We're beginning to see it, by the way. So, at Surge, I focus on, at Peak 15, I focus on Surge, which is our early stage program, right? Where we invest up to $3 million per company, and then we have 10 to 15 companies that we work with over a period of a couple of months, 5-6 months. Our 9th cohort of Surge, which we just wrapped up, had 13 companies. 8 of them, the co-founders are PhDs.
Oh,
6
wow.
of those companies, both co-founders are PhDs, right? Now, we would love to see more of that, because at the end of the day, the truly disruptive innovation, right? A lot of it, a lot of it does require very deeply technical talent. So you look at some of the frontier technologies, right? Whether it's semiconductors, whether it's AI. I mean, AI is a great example, right? We don't have as many startups building, let's say, foundational models, right? We invested in a company called Sarvam that's building LLMs for Indian languages, but that's very rare, because that team actually is deeply technical. They had been at Microsoft Research, one had been at IIT Madras, they had been India's first set of models, right? But that's very rare. So you look at biosciences. So I think the second thing is we really need to, and I think it's not easy to solve, because we don't have as a nation, we don't have a culture of R&D, right? We need to invest a lot more into R&D. We need to have many more PhDs. We need to have many more deep tech incubators. We need to have many more deep tech funds. So I'd say that's probably the second thing. And then, if I was to pick a third thing, I'd say, look, our GDP just should grow faster. Now, by the way, we
More
are the
users.
fastest growing large economy in the world. And I'd say that's less around what could have happened. I think it's very important for India for us to see if we can grow at 6 to 7% for the next 10 or 20 or 30 years, right? Because that then lifts all boats. But that's not a historical thing. I think we're doing very well as a large economy today. We just need to make sure we sustain this pace of economic growth.
Sure. And you did a better job of your summary yourself. So
I figured, I learned. It's like an LLM, Don't ramble.
You're doing well.
The top 3 points.
You're doing well. So that is great. Now, while we are at it, why don't you also talk about the funding ecosystem as you see in this year? Because I would like to take questions and we don't have that much time. So why don't you also talk about 2024 and what it's going to look like for startups, for VCs, for the funding ecosystem, and then
So let's start with last year,
Yeah.
2023, because everything's relative, right? Last year, the seed market. So seed is, if you're trying to raise less than, let's say, $3 or $4 million, okay, you're trying to raise less than 25 to 30 crores, we call that seed. I mean, different people have different, like seed, pre-seed, whatever, but let's just call that whole thing seed. Last year, the seed market was very active. It was down a little bit from the year before, but trend line-wise, it was very active, right? Series A market was probably down 30% versus, what we think is a trend line. I'm not comparing everything to 2021 because, as I said, that was like an anomaly year, right? But the growth market was down a lot, right? And the growth market was down because the large checks, weren't coming, right? I think now that I can confidently say, now that we are about 6 weeks into 2024 calendar, seed market continues, very vibrant, right? Series A market is back. So
Okay.
those of you that are trying to raise Series A,
Good, thank you.
there we go, there we go, there we go. Salt,
Yeah.
But the bar is higher.
Yes.
Okay, the Series A market is back, but the bar is actually very high.
Yeah.
But it's back. So we're seeing this even in our own portfolio. The growth market, I think, is still going to take some time, right? And I think for those of you in the room that are trying to rate a growth round, growth usually is north of $25, $30 million, okay? So think of it as a sort of a Series C and beyond, or maybe a very large B, although today 30 million B would be very unusual. And what's going on there, Shinjini, is that the best growth stage companies have raised a lot of capital during 2021 and 2022 at 2021 prices.
Yes.
Right? So as an entrepreneur, you would know this. If you have a lot of capital, you will try to grow into your last round valuation, as opposed to try to raise capital at maybe a valuation that's lower. So I would say last year, seed market was actually very active. This year, you'll see the Series A market being very active, come back to sort of normal pace. And I think the growth market will still take some time.
Okay, so that should be my cue to let people ask a few questions.
Do we have mics, by the way? I don't know whether we have.
And
we have mics, yeah, okay.
if people are shy, then I do have a lot of questions.
No, people are not shy.
Okay,
There's
people are
questions
not
over
shy,
there.
so there you go.
So I want to ask, what about M&A market this year?
M&A market this year. I mean, look, India really hasn't had much of a startup M&A market. There was a brief period of time where the Tata Group bought a bunch of companies, as you know. This is spreading your cough.
Yeah,
to me.
I am really
Anyway,
sorry.
yeah.
I told you.
Okay. No, just kidding.
This is
By the way,
history.
we had a company, one of our companies called PinkSafe, which was a cybersecurity company that was acquired by SentinelOne. It was announced first week of the year. I think the M&A market in the US may come back, especially if you're an AI company today. It's quite active, right? You're seeing companies like Mosaic ML get bought for $1 billion with reasonably small amount of revenue. I think with India, it's India really hasn't had an M&A market. Actually, I just saw Rajesh from Make My Trip walk in. You should ask him the next, like, what companies is Make My Trip going to buy?
Yeah.
But I look, at least in the US as startups, right, you have a vast majority of startups will exit for entrepreneurs, not for founders, through acquisitions, through M&A, right? It's Google, Facebook, Amazon, the list goes on, Cisco. In India, we think that most exits will happen through IPOs, right? Because in India, but you have to be profitable. You can't be an unprofitable company. But if you're a profitable company, we think IPOs, you have to get to, call it 100 crores of EBITDA. You can list on the main exchange. You'll trade very nicely. We have an SME exchange that's very, very active. So actually, those of you who are startup founders, if you can get to some reasonable level of profitability, I'm not even talking thousands of crores, okay? Like let's say 30, 40, 50 crores. If you can get to that level of profitability, I would strongly urge you to explore an IPO. Because the market right now is open. Now, of course, we'll have to see how the market holds up. So I'm going way beyond your M&A. M&A, I don't know. We really haven't, as India, we haven't had a startup M&A market.
Yeah. So that is important because, for startups, exit is important and, IPO.
I would not depend on, if you're
Exit
building
profitable.
in India for India, I would not depend on M&A or assume that M&A is going to be the way you're going to exit. It's different if you're building for global markets. You're in a strategic space, cybersecurity, modern data stack, AI, infrastructure, DevOps, right? These are categories that are very hot right now. So it's different if you're building a very differentiated company in one of those spaces. But if you're building for India, you should be thinking about how to get to profitability, how to get to scale, how to build an enduring company. And the good thing is, I think you'll know, given your financial services, I think at least our view is Indian capital markets for the next 20, 30 years are going to be very robust. Of course, we'll have ups and downs. I mean, we're trading at all-time peaks right now.
Thank you.
So in fact, you partly answered a follow-up question that I had about the difference that you started out with, which is to say core technology versus solving for consumer, AI versus all about India, I think it kind of leads you to the path of going for the IPO because you're solving problems for a large number of people, so you become revenue driven over the core technology that you're building that can be useful for somebody else who has solved for the, who can take it and solve faster for the consumer. So the nature of the market is different, and I wanted to, okay, let's take a few more questions.
I just want to clarify something, Shinjini, which is, when I say all about India, it's not only consumer, right?
Okay.
It's solving for Indian consumers, it's solving for Indian businesses,
Yes.
it's solving for Indian government,
Risk.
right? No,
And
it's
risk.
also like, think about, we have a lot of
Yeah.
innovation in sectors like
Space.
defense,
Yeah.
like space. These are not just solving for consumers, right? They're solving for their B2B use cases. But also keep in mind, India also has AI. If
Yeah.
you look at our portfolio, we have close to 30 AI investments that we have just in our portfolio, right? So what I'm saying is, Indian ecosystem is not only about AI.
Sure.
The US ecosystem today is only about AI. We are all about India, including AI,
Oh,
right? So
cool.
maybe that's AI squared.
Cool.
All about India, AI,
And
including
also-
AI, which is
Okay.
artificial intelligence. So that's a good clarifying thing I
No,
want to
that
point out.
sounds good. That sounds really good.
Okay, let's see other questions. There were names. The other
There's a question there. Let's take two or three questions.
Great stuff. I have two parts, two questions. First one is, if you have to rate Google versus Microsoft on AI capabilities,
Okay.
part
Sorry,
A.
I couldn't hear sorry, say that again. There's an echo. I can hear myself and I can hear two of you.
Okay, great stuff. Part 8 of the question, if you can compare Google versus Microsoft currently on AI capabilities. And part B of the question, how does India stack up for the next 5 years in terms of AI versus, say, US and China?
Yeah, I think both are good questions. Look, so in terms of Microsoft comparison to Google, you know as much as I do. I left Google 4.5 years ago, and I left Microsoft 14 years ago. So literally what you know is what I know. I think, look, what I can tell you, having worked at both companies for long times, they're both formidable companies. Formidable, right? So Google basically has been working on AI for as long as it takes. You've seen what Microsoft's done with both investments in OpenAI, et cetera. I think they're both formidable competitors. They will both do amazing things on AI. I think on your second question, look, before I get to AI, it's important that we keep in mind what Indian entrepreneurs over now close to 40 years, right? Infosys was founded in 1983. Have been extraordinary at applying technology to problems in businesses as well as for consumers and also for government, if you look at things like Aadhaar and whatnot, right? I think when it comes to AI, right, so the simplest way we think about AI is there are foundation model companies. So think about OpenAI, think about Gemini now from Google, think about Mistral, which is the European company, right? And you can think about Sarvam in India. Foundational model companies. Then there are infra and tooling companies, right? Tools that make LLMs, trainings go faster. How do you make sure models don't hallucinate? How do you deploy them faster? How do you have privacy in the enterprise? How do you have data governance in the enterprise? So we call all that stuff tooling. And then the third layer really is applications. And applications are massive numbers, right? Vertical applications, horizontal applications. We think that India's game will be somewhat in tooling and infra because we've been pretty good at that, right? Like in terms of look at companies like, as a nation, companies like Postman. In our portfolio, we have companies like Atlan that are very, very good at data infrastructure, developer tools, DevOps, things like that. But our game really is applications, right? Which is being able to build applications leveraging AI that are 10x better. Because what we think is going to happen, today most software in the world is boring. It doesn't do anything for you, right? Like software should take the action. And what you're seeing today is software, because of AI, that can actually take action. You know what I mean? It's not a system of record. It's not a system of intelligence. It's moving to sort of what we're calling systems of action, right? It gets things done. Agents, AI agents, and so on. So we think that India, over the next 4 or 5 years, both solving Indian problems, because we have to, by the way, right? How will India get to 10x the quality of education for our 290 million students? We have to do it. We have to leverage AI. How will we deliver world-class healthcare to 1.4 million Indians? We have to leverage AI, right? So every industry in India will apply AI to make outcomes better, to develop 10x better solutions. But we also have this incredible opportunity, right, to help develop solutions, vertical solutions, horizontal solutions. They're called applications, but I'm just calling them solutions, for the world. We have to keep in mind that of the top 5 IT services companies by market cap globally, 3 of them are Indian. TCS, Infosys, and HCL now, right? None of them invented the operating system. None of them actually developed their own software. None of them developed hardware. What they were really, really good at is taking existing technology and applying it and solving the problems that big customers have, right? That's what they're really good at. So I've been a long believer in this, that Indian entrepreneurs' superpower is application. And, and the good thing is, as a nation, we have these literally 1 billion problems that we can solve it too, right? Everywhere you look, you see a huge problem to solve, and that's actually very encouraging as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, new technology, old problems. Let's get them going. There's a person here with a question.
Hi, sir. I'm Ajinkya from Business Standard. A lovely session. Just wanted to ask you one question on, given there's a lot of heat on fintechs, especially when it comes to compliance now. How has compliance and all the regulatory requirements changed or as part of your priority areas when it comes to due diligence? Because a few people I speak to say now there's VCs and Ps will have one more danda in their hands. Let's say they could have a CRO, a chief risk officer, appointed by them. So how do you see the entire space now there? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a good question. Look, the thing is, if you're building a fintech company, right, number one, make sure you understand the regulation. And number two, you should abide by it. So as investors, today, if you're looking at fintech, right, this has always been the case with us, but we'll be extra cautious to make sure that you're not doing something that is outside of regulatory purview. See, the thing is, you have things that are not regulated yet. You have things that are regulated where the rules are reasonably clear. And then there are things that are regulated where it is super, super, duper, duper clear. Like you cannot launch a bank. Okay? You just can't launch a bank, right? Whereas, so it's in that second bucket. So there's a bucket where there's no regulatory framework at all, okay? There's a bunch of spaces, like some of the next generation spaces. So that's okay, because we don't know what it's going to be. At some point, it's going to get regulated. But I think it's in the second bucket where the regulations are in place, right, where you have to be very, very careful. So I think when we look at a company, we just sort of say, hey, look, if the regulatory framework is in place, is this company, adopting to that framework? And I think that's very important. And you'll see, look, Indian, startups are very good at adapting, right? So I think our ecosystem is adapting very, very fast to making sure that we play by the rules.
And I think people will...
You should add to this.
Yeah, especially the first and the second bucket that you talked about. The second bucket is the one which you can get better at because you have the rules and you actually can begin to enforce it earlier, which is where my question was, how early is too early for culture and compliance? And maybe with this, with what you are talking about, you begin to pay attention earlier. It's actually the interesting things that we are going to start seeing will be in the first bucket. Because with all the technology and innovation and the AI and applications of AI that you talked about, and the ambiguity between how people do buy other things and buy financial products, which has always been a completely separate thing, is going to be not so separate anymore. You are going to find a lot more happening in that space where regulations have not been written, because regulations are written with a certain business model in mind. And these models will be very interesting that will come up. So actually, all of our jobs will be much more interesting because you not only have to think about what's already been written and interpreted, and maybe interpreted wrongly, but actually looking more futuristically about how very core foundational systems and value systems and trust systems in your society will change, because it is changing, right? Like microfinance industry, for example, was built on the idea that people will stand for each other, right? Today, you think about it, everybody wants to stand for themselves. You trust your phone more than you trust your neighbor. So those things will be
Speak for yourself, by the way. I trust my neighbors.
I keep changing my neighbors.
Should we take one last question? There's only 36 seconds left. Yeah, there's maybe over here. Can we get a mic over here?
there's a lady there who
Oh, there's
also
two of
has a
them? Okay, we'll
question,
take
so
two
I will
more
ask
then.
Yeah.
I can't see the hand
She
going up.
raised her hand and then she. Yeah, go ahead. We'll take both the questions and then.
Rajan, great session. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask you about the last 18 months. You've seen a change from a VC standpoint, where the hashtags in a boardroom before the last 18 months were about habit change, burn, and runway. And now it's all about scale with profitability. So how has that entire approach changed in a boardroom from a VC's point of view?
Yeah, I mean, look, so at the end of the day, our business is really quite simple, you know. We invest money in a company. Takes X number of years, could be 5, 10, 15, hopefully not 25. Sometimes it does. And we expect a return, you know. And how do you build a return, give a return? You have to build a profitable large company, right? So I think, as you said, but look, when you have zero, look, basically in a ZERP environment, zero rate, interest rate environment, okay? Your DCF is not impacted by when you get profitable. But when your interest rate now happens to be 6 or 7%, which is a dollar rate, 5%, 6%, all of a sudden, when you get profitable matters. I mean, the simplest way I think about it is that, right? So we are, by the way, it's very interesting if you look at, we have 400 active companies in our firm, 400 active portfolio companies, right? When we look at the profitability trajectory of these companies, the change is remarkable. I mean, it's just remarkable. In fact, Rajesh is sitting here. I messaged him because Goldman had put out a report about a month ago that said, this year, the most profitable public internet company in the country is going to be Make My Trip, which is quite remarkable, right? I mean,
Let's give him an ovation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Rajesh, big round of applause. I mean, that's amazing, right? Like
Yeah.
now, of course, because they've been working at it for a long time and the markets are coming back. So, I mean, we are all focused on the same things. And by the way, profitability is a stage-specific thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you're an early-stage company where I invest in, right, all we want you to do is launch and get to product market fit. Then you have to start scaling. But even at Series A now, there's no requirement of profitability. But if you have negative contribution margin, which is contribution margin after marketing, it's very hard to raise. You just will not raise, right? So that the focus on unit economics, the focus on what we call, are you trying to build an enduring company? That is there in a very, very big way.
And good, that's good for everyone. I think there's a lady there who had a question. If you still have it, we can take that. No, she got busy. Okay. I am going to say a huge thank you. I was feeling a little unwell, but I'm actually feeling better. I don't know about you. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking questions. You've been a really... See, the room filled up.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you didn't need artificial
They may be
intelligence
just
for
avatars
that.
that just showed up.
Thank you so much, everyone.